It started like any normal day in the school holidays, but ended in horror and tragedy. 3 innocent young girls killed in a frenzied knife attack.
And when I went out, he's holding us like a 6-year-old girl in his arms, covered with blood, trying to save her.
Six-year-old B.B. King was born to her parents, Lauren and Ben King. And she was a sweet, kind, and spirited girl who was full of joy and love. She also had a sister who was 3 years older than her, whom she shared an amazing bond with. 9-year-old Alice de Silva Aguiar was born to her parents, Sergio and Alexandra. And she was a curious girl who never forgot the details of things. She was perfect in her parents' eyes, and was also a confident, friendly, playful, respectful, and empathetic young girl. Alice adored animals, watching movies, eating popcorn, and snuggling with her parents while doing so. Then there was 7-year-old Elsie Dot Stancombe, who was full of love and was also a determined, kind, and sweet young girl. She loved cheerleading, dancing, chatting, going to parties, and was said to be wise beyond her years. Elsie was additionally a very devoted Swiftie, which if you don't know is a Taylor Swift fan. This love of Taylor Swift was something that these 3 young girls shared, and was also what brought them together on the morning of July 29, 2024. They were all attending a Taylor Swift-themed dance class that was being held at a community studio venue known as the Heart Space in Southport, United Kingdom. This space normally hosted yoga, dance, pregnancy, and baby and toddler classes. This particular Taylor Swift-themed class was a yoga, dance, and bracelet-making workshop that was themed around the artist's music. The workshop was aimed at kids 6 to 11 and had sold out over a week earlier, with 26 children being booked for the class. Shortly before the girls were about to be picked up by their parents at 11:45 a.m., they were sitting around a table making bracelets. At the same time, a masked and hooded person came through the building's front entrance that was unlocked for fire safety reasons. And he walked right up the flight of stairs to the studio where the girls were. This person then began moving through the room while remaining completely silent. And he started stabbing the children at random. He had an 8-inch knife in his possession. Many of the children and the teachers in the room, including dance teacher Leanne Lucas, had no idea what was even going on at first. Leanne didn't realize until she herself got stabbed in the back 5 times what was happening. She immediately began to try to shield the children from this maniac and rushed them out of the venue via the emergency fire exit. As the children ran from the studio, the armed man was chasing after them, stabbing them in the back. One little girl would get pulled back inside and stabbed multiple times. Luckily, she was able to get out of the building in the end, and she collapsed to the ground. A man named Jonathan Hayes, who was working in an office in the same building, had run into the dance studio where he'd heard the children start screaming. And he had encountered the masked individual who was standing over a child. Jonathan had retreated to his office, but he was followed by the attacker, who had then stabbed him in the leg, making him collapse to the ground. Members of the public at the same time were trying to assist the children who were escaping from the building. One man began administering CPR to little Alice, while another man ran into the building where he had seen the man holding the knife.
We were driving down Hart Street, and then all of a sudden he slammed on the middle of the road and said, "Have you seen that?" I said, "No." He reverses the van back, and then all I see from my side was literally half a head from a girl hanging from the side of a car. So I jump out the car and I go up to her and I just ask her if she's all right, and she just looked in complete shock. She had blood all over her body, and she just screamed at me. She said, "He's killing kids over there. He's killing kids over there." I just looked at Martin and we were just in complete shock. We just didn't know what to think, didn't know what to do. But looking at this woman, she looked in a really bad way, and I just knew it was a really bad situation. So me and Martin start walking towards the place where she's pointed at.
And how far is she from the place where she's pointing at?
She's at the top of the road, leaning against the car. There was more people down the road, but at this stage at the time, we were so focused on this girl, we didn't see there was more people down there. We're just hearing this girl screaming to us that this guy's stabbing kids at this location. So we start walking down, we'll start running towards this place where she's pointed, and she gets up. It's like she used all of her energy to point to us where this was happening, and then she completely collapses onto the floor. In which case we go up to make sure she's all right. She was also on the phone to the police at the same time, which is when I've took the phone off her and I'm on the phone to the police. Martin's making sure she's all right. I start running towards this direction, which is obviously where this is happening, where these kids are in the dance studio, and I'm running. I get to the car park, and as I'm running towards the door, there's a car which is a woman's in the car, and she's beeping her horn and she's screaming for me to come over. So I run straight over to the car, and it's just a middle-aged woman, and she's got, I presume, one of her child in the passenger seat, and then in the back there's like 4 or 5 more kids, all in the back, covered in blood. It was like a scene that you'd see on like a disaster film, honestly. And she just looked at me, the woman, and she said, "Honestly, love, I just want to make sure these kids are safe. I'm just going to park on the road. Please, can you get this girl out?" So I open, you got the driver's side. On the driver's side, behind the driver's seat, I open the door, and honestly, like, there's this girl, which will probably stay with me for the rest of my life, and she was completely out of it. I can't explain to you how horrific it is what I saw, but in the moment, I didn't even know what to do. I didn't know what to think. I just wanted to get her out of the car and try and get her to safety. So I've just got this girl out of the car, and I've ran towards the road, and I've just been, because we're there at the start, you see, so there's only a few members of the public, and the main thing in that specific moment was like, there's still more, like, this is actually happening, and there's people inside there, because that's where they've come from. So I just initially wanted to get her out of the car and try and get her to safety, like, but I didn't know where was safe, if that makes sense.
Police had been contacted by the dance instructor, Leanne, at 11:47 a.m., just 2 minutes after the attack initially started. And officers would arrive on the scene just 10 minutes later. They then entered the studio with a taser, and they found the attacker standing over BB's body. He was still holding the knife, and when he was ordered to drop his weapon, he did, and was then placed under arrest. Police would find the other dance instructor, Heidi Little, hiding with one of the girls in the bathroom. Emergency services quickly declared a major incident, and 13 ambulances, the fire service, and 3 medical air ambulances were brought in. Both 6-year-old BB King, who had 122 stab wounds, and 7-year-old Elsie Dot Stancombe, who had 85 stab wounds, would be declared dead at the scene. 9 other children, including 9-year-old Alice De Silva Aguiar, as well as 2 other adults, were taken to the hospital, all in critical condition. Little Alice would end up dying the following day. She had multiple stab wounds to her body, as well as a severe head injury. Now, before the attacker had been publicly identified by police, misinformation about the suspect's identity had been spreading online. People were under the impression that the monster who had stabbed all these children and 2 adults was an immigrant and an asylum seeker, and soon they began protesting. Though many people were just angry that authorities had not done enough to protect these children from this brutal attack before it happened. Some of the protests that were taking place would quickly turn violent, with many people chanting, "We want our country back," and even vandalizing a mosque. The reason why the killer's identity was not publicly revealed immediately was because he was under the age of 18, and therefore his identity was protected by the courts. However, this would end up being overturned just 5 days after the attack, and his name was given to the public. And this name was Axel Rudukabana, and he was only 17 years old. But he was not an asylum seeker. He had actually been born in Wales to his Rwandan parents, who had previously immigrated to the UK seeking asylum from the Rwanda genocide. On the morning of the attack, shortly before 11:45 a.m., Axel had been seen arriving at the Heart Space via taxi, which he had booked under the false name of Simon. He had left the vehicle without paying his fare, walked a little ways, then entered the building.
Number 34A, yeah. Are we cash or card, mate? Are we cash or card, mate?
Following his arrest, Axel was charged with 3 counts of murder, 10 counts of attempted murder, and possession of a bladed article. He was later separately charged under the Biological Weapons Act of 1974 and the Terrorism Act of 2000. This had come after police searched his bedroom and found enough ricin hidden in a box under his bed to kill as many as 12,000 people. Axel was additionally found to be in possession of a military study of an Al-Qaeda training manual. When police searched his laptop, they found that Axel had an obsession with ethnic cleansing. He'd also done searches on things such as war, Nazi Germany, violence around Buddhism in Sri Lanka, clan cleansing in Somalia, Rwandan genocide, victims of torture, tales of beheading, and cartoons depicting graphic violence. It was also said that he had a severe hatred of all white people, believing they should be dead. Shortly after his arrest, the maniac would brag about what he had done to these poor innocent children, saying, "I'm so glad those kids are dead. It makes me happy." He additionally told police, "So happy, 6 years old," referring to Bibi. He also said, "It's a good thing they're dead. Yeah. I don't care. I'm feeling neutral." As I had said previously, there had been plenty of warning signs in Axel's past that he was a complete psychopath. Police, as well as anti-terrorist authorities, had had previous interactions with him, and they knew all about his disturbing thoughts. Back in mid-2019, when Axel was just 13 years old, he had called Childline, which is a hotline that offers counseling to young people under the age of 19 in the UK. He would go on to ask them what he should do if he wanted to kill somebody. The following day, he would explain that he wanted to kill a student at his school who had been bullying him, and this incident would be referred to police. When authorities had visited him shortly after, he admitted that he had carried a kitchen knife with him on 10 separate occasions to school, with the intentions of using it. Within just days of this call to Childline, Axel had been permanently expelled from his high school. He had then been sent to a specialist education center, and just a month later, he had been found looking up U.S. school shootings while in IT class. This was reported to authorities at Prevent, which is a UK program that's aimed at preventing people from becoming terrorists. But after officers interviewed him, Axel was not escalated as a concern because he had no firm ideology. A month after that, Axel returned to his old high school where he'd been expelled from, and he came armed with a hockey stick. He walked into the classroom, attacked another pupil, breaking his wrist, and had to be restrained by staff members. Police later found a knife in his backpack and arrested him on suspicion of assault for some reason rather than assault, and carrying a bladed article. Axel would plead guilty to his charges, and this earned him a criminal record at only 13 years old. He additionally went through a rehabilitative program centered on knife crime and offending behavior, which he completed in 2021. Axel was also diagnosed with having autism in February of 2021. That same month, he would again be reported to anti-terrorism authorities at Prevent. This was after he had posted on Instagram about the late Libyan dictator, Muammar Gaddafi, but this case was closed without ever meeting with Axel. 2 months after that, Axel was reported to Prevent yet again, when his teacher noticed that he was looking up the 2017 London Bridge attack. And again, he wasn't visited by authorities in person, and no further action was taken. From November of 2021 to the time of the stabbings, police were called to Axel's home at least 4 times by his parents, as the teen's behavior grew more and more erratic. In November, Axel had kicked his father and damaged his car during an argument. Then, the following March, after his mother had reported him as missing, he was found on a bus, refusing to pay his fare, and he had a knife in his possession. But instead of arresting him, which would have been his second arrest for a knife crime, authorities took Axel home to his mother and told her to keep knives out of his reach. Just weeks after that, police were back at the home where Axel lived with his parents. This time, it was because he had erupted in anger after his father had banned him from using his laptop. His parents kept asking officers for help with Axel's behavior, but it seems they had no good solution for it. In the meantime, Axel was making plans in his bedroom for an attack. He had bought castor beans, funnels, flasks, and safety goggles on Amazon, and had them delivered to an unsuspecting neighbor. The knife that Axel had used to kill the 3 girls had also been purchased on Amazon and delivered to the home. This is despite the fact that technically you need to be at least 18 to make such a purchase, but he was only 17 at the time. But apparently authorities were unable to see Axel's history with Prevent because that information was kept on a separate system and was only accessible to counterterrorism officials. Makes sense. By February of 2023, Axel had stopped going to his mental health support services, and he had not been to school in almost a year. He had been spending more and more time home in his room on his tablet and spiraling down a rabbit hole of darkness. Just 1 week before he had stabbed Bibi, Elsie, and Alice to death on July 22nd, Axel had booked a taxi using a pseudonym to take him to his old high school, Range High School. That day, he'd been wearing the same outfit that he did on the day of the attack, a green hoodie and a surgical mask. But his father had spotted him before he left the house, and he pleaded with the taxi driver not to take Axel back to his high school. Eventually, Axel would go back inside his house, and he did not get inside the taxi. But had his father not caught him that day, his attack likely would have been launched on the students at that school. So Axel had clearly never hidden his dark obsessions from the world. And multiple people seemed to have been worried about him too, including his classmates. But he was either never taken seriously, or no one, including authorities, knew quite what to do with him. Though you would think that with how concerned Axel's parents were, since they had called the cops several times asking for assistance, they would have monitored what was going on with him inside his bedroom a little bit better. After his arrest, an emergency review would conclude that Prevent had followed the correct procedures at the time. A trial was scheduled to start for Axel in January of 2025, but right before it was about to begin, he pleaded guilty to all 16 of his charges. At the beginning of his sentence hearing, Axel would twice plead loudly for medical services, saying that he had chest pains. But the judge told him to stop, or he was going to be removed from the courtroom. Axel was then sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 52 years. Apparently, if he had been 18 years old at the time, and he was only days away from that birthday, mind you, he would have been issued a whole life order. Though the judge said it's likely that he'll never be released. And I certainly hope not, because that shouldn't even be a possibility. He would clearly do something like this again. In court, one of the girls who had been stabbed by Axel but ended up surviving would speak, and she would say that day she knew she was running for her life. She remembers physically pushing her friends who were still able to run as they were fleeing down the stairs. Axel was close behind them. She would say in court to her would-be killer, "I knew from your eyes you wanted to try to kill us all." Another child who had survived that day had been stabbed 30 times. She'd been airlifted to a hospital where doctors operated on her for 6 hours, trying to save the use of her hand, fingers, and arm. This little girl had also watched 2 of the girls die. During one point of her recovery, she would tell her parents that she didn't even know who she was anymore. However, the happy little girl that she once was started to return 6 months later, and her mother said that Axel had completely failed to destroy her spirit. A vigil was held for Bibi, Elsie, and Alice outside the Atkinson in East Bank Square on the evening of July 30th, 2024, with thousands of people in attendance. Flowers and handwritten notes were left there, as well as near the scene of the attack. Taylor Swift also responded after the attack, saying, "The horror of yesterday's attack in Southport is washing over me continuously, and I'm just completely in shock. These were just little kids at a dance class. I am at a complete loss for how to ever convey my sympathies to these families." Taylor later met with the families of the victims, welcoming them to the backstage of her Eras Tour concerts at the Wembley Stadium in London. Within a day of the incident, the pop star's fans also launched a Swifties for Southport Just Giving page and raised over £300,000 for the Alder Hey Children's Charity. Fundraising pages were also set up to support the families of the victims, which raised a combined total of over £200,000. A celebration of life was held for 9-year-old Alice De Silva Aguiar on August 6, 2024. In a tribute to their daughter, Alice's parents said during the service, "Keep smiling and dancing like you love to do, our princess. Like we said to you before, you're always our princess and no one would change that." Alice's funeral was held about a week later on August 11th at St. Patrick's Catholic Church in Southport. Outside the packed church, many mourners listened as the service was broadcast through speakers. During the ceremony, her father Sergio and mother Alexandra said, "Alice was our perfect dream child. Everything was idyllic from the moment you arrived." Their tribute continued, "A good girl with strong values and kind nature, a lover of animals and an environmentalist in the making. You moved our world with your confidence and empathy. Playful, energetic, friendly, and always so respectful. She was a peacemaker of the playground. No shouting is a house rule you applied. A big task for a small girl, especially in a Portuguese household. You were taken away from us too soon, and we often ask why. Why here? Why us? Why you? We wonder if you ever thought of us, called for us. We wondered if you felt any pain. We hope not, my darling. For now, our beloved angel, keep dancing. Mummy and Daddy will always, always love you." One of Alice's teachers recently named her baby after Alice as well. 6-year-old B.B. King's funeral was held privately in Southport on August 17th, and her family encouraged others to light a candle in her memory. A statement from her parents said, "Our beloved B.B., only 6 years old, was full of joy, light, and love, and she will always remain in our hearts as the sweet, kind, and spirited girl we adore." They added, "Our hearts are broken, but we find some comfort in knowing that B.B. was so deeply loved by all who knew her. She will forever be our shimmering star, and we will carry her with us in everything we do." B.B.'s 9-year-old sister had also been at the studio that day, and she witnessed the attack. But luckily, she managed to escape. 7-year-old Elsie Stancombe's funeral took place on August 23rd at St. John's Church in Birkdale. Her family asked others to wear bright colors to Elsie's special day, and they said they would be celebrating their amazing girl and her life with positivity, hope, and love. Her coffin, topped with a blue cuddly toy, was carried up a pink carpet as members of her cheerleading squad, Vortex Cheer, formed a guard of honor. Taylor Swift's Love Story, one of her favorite songs, was performed at the end of the service, which was also attended by the family dog, Bobby. Well, thank you for listening to BB, Elsie, and Alice's story today. This killer is nothing short of an absolute monster and one who should have been stopped long before that day in July. Axel had made it pretty clear just how fucked in the head he was, but nothing he had ever done was taken seriously enough. That is, until it was much too late. And not only did these 3 innocent little girls unnecessarily lose their lives, but other children and adults were permanently, mentally, and physically scarred by his actions that day. What do you think about this case?
Testimony from the officer who found the body of nursing student Laken Riley.
I found it. Ma'am. Oh, I need EMS immediately. She's not breathing.
Laken Hope Riley was born on January 10, 2002, in Marietta, Georgia, to her mother, Allison Phillips, and her father, Jason Riley. She had 2 sisters and 1 brother, and was said to be an amazing daughter, sister, friend, and an overall very caring and extraordinary person. In 2020, Laken had graduated from River Ridge High School, where she'd run cross-country and was a member of the track team. Following graduation, she attended the University of Georgia, where she became a member of the Alpha Chi Omega sorority. Later, Laken, who was always very passionate about helping others, enrolled in a nursing program at the Augusta Medical College's campus in Athens, Georgia. The 22-year-old also worked as a nanny for 2 young children while she was attending school. On the morning of February 22nd, 2024, Laken decided to go out for a jog. Shortly before 9 a.m., she would send her mother Allison a text message saying, "Good morning. About to go for a run if you're free to talk." A few minutes later, at 9:03 a.m., she would briefly speak with her mother on the phone. After hanging up, Lakin would put on her headphones and begin listening to music. Then, 2 minutes later, she was captured jogging on a trail camera that was situated near the University of Georgia's intramural fields with her iPhone in her hand. She ran out of the camera's view just 1 minute later at 9:06 a.m., and this would be the last time that Lakin was seen alive. Because only 5 minutes after the camera had last captured Lakin, a 911 call was placed from the 22-year-old's phone. However, the operator was unable to speak with anyone before the call was hung up, and they would call back twice, but no one answered. Then Lakin's mother would call her daughter back shortly before 9:30 a.m., and when she did, Lakin did not answer. Allison then continued to call her a few more times before texting her at 9:58 a.m. saying, "You're making me nervous not answering when you're out running. Are you okay?" Very worried about her at this point, Lakin's mother and sister would continue to call her, but all their calls went unanswered. Later that morning, Lakin's 2 roommates noticed that she had not returned back after her run, and they were unable to reach her on her cell phone. So they decided to find Lakin's location on the Find My iPhone app, and when they did, they noticed that she had not moved for some time. As such, they decided to head out and look for her themselves. When they did, they found one of Lakin's AirPods on the trail where she'd been running, but no Lakin. At that point, the roommates decided that they needed to call emergency services, but had to go back to their apartment in order to do so because there was currently an AT&T outage. Once police arrived on the scene, they began to look for Lakin. Just a half hour later, her body was discovered by a University of Georgia police officer.
I found it. Ma'am. Oh, I need EMS immediately. She's not breathing.
It was found 65 feet away from the trail in Oconee Forest Park behind Lake Herrick, and her head had been bashed in. Lakin's death was determined to have been caused by a combination of blunt force trauma and asphyxiation. Her clothing was additionally heavily manipulated, as the waistband of her running leggings had been pulled down some, and her jacket, shirts, and sports bra had been pulled up, but there were no signs of sexual assault. Investigators determined that based on Lakin's smartwatch, around 9:10 a.m., something had happened that made her stop in her tracks. Around that same time, she had initiated her phone's SOS function and called 911. Lakin's watch data showed that her encounter with her attacker was long and fierce. But at 9:28 a.m., her fight came to an end as her watch showed that her heart had stopped beating. As police began their investigation into Lakin's murder, they announced that they believed her death had been a crime of opportunity, and they believed that her killer had acted alone. Detectives would begin to inspect surveillance video that was taken in the area that Lakin's body had been found. They would discover that a few hours before she had been brutally murdered, a man wearing a black Adidas cap had been walking towards the area where Lakin was found shortly before 8 a.m. They also reviewed security footage that had been taken from an apartment complex less than a mile away from the crime scene. This video showed a man that looked similar to the man in the other footage, throwing something away in the dumpster at 9:44 a.m. Upon searching the trash, police found a dark hooded jacket that had blood on it, as well as dark hair strands that they would later determine belonged to Lakin. As authorities were searching this dumpster, they noticed that there was a man sitting out on his porch, and he was wearing the same dark Adidas hat that they had seen in the surveillance footage. When authorities approached the man, they also noticed that there was dirt on the hat, similar to the dirt that had been found on Lakin's body and clothing. They came to find out that this man's name was Diego Ibarra and began to question him. As police were speaking with Diego, he told them that the black hat, as well as the black jacket, belonged to his 26-year-old roommate and brother, Jose Ibarra. During their conversation, Diego told police that he was cooking something inside the apartment and needed to go turn off the stove so he wouldn't burn the food. It was at that point that they discovered there were 2 other people who were sleeping inside the apartment, including Diego's brother, Jose. Officers then asked him to step outside to question him. While speaking with Jose, an officer noticed that his knuckles were rather red, and he had scratches on his arms that looked to be fingernail scratches. When the officer asked him why his knuckles were so red, Jose said because it was cold outside, yet could offer no explanation as to why he had the scratches. He additionally had a fresh puncture to his left wrist that he could not explain either. Jose Ibarra was subsequently arrested and charged with 1 count of malice murder, 3 counts of felony murder, and 1 count each of kidnapping, aggravated assault, aggravated battery, hindering an emergency telephone call, tampering with evidence, and peeping Tom. The last charge was in relation to another 911 call that had been made the same morning that Laken would be found dead. Shortly before 8 a.m., a female graduate student who lived in off-campus housing had contacted 911, saying that while she was in the shower, someone had been jiggling her door handle trying to enter her apartment. As the student looked through her peephole, a person wearing a black Adidas hat had ducked. But then, she later saw the same person peering into her bedroom window. In the surveillance video, this man could be seen going up to the student's door a total of 6 times over the course of an hour, twice opening her outer screen door. The man in the surveillance video had been wearing the same clothing that Jose had been wearing in the other footage. So police believed that this was also him, searching for his victim, any victim. Police would also end up finding a pair of black disposable gloves near Jose's apartment complex that had Laken's DNA on them. These matched another pair of gloves that had been found in Jose's dresser drawer. Then, when Jose had been brought down to the police station, they additionally found Laken's DNA underneath his fingernails. Now, Jose Antonio Ibarra was a Venezuelan man who had illegally entered the United States in September of 2022. Crossing the U.S. southern border with Mexico in El Paso, Texas. He had originally been apprehended by authorities who then released him into the country. Following that, Jose had stayed in a migrant shelter in New York until September of 2023. At that point, he'd been given a humanitarian flight down to Georgia after his brother told him that he could get him work. After that, Jose had lived with his brother Diego in their apartment complex, which was about a mile away from where Laken had been killed. While he'd still lived in New York, in September of 2023, Jose had actually been arrested on a charge of acting in a manner to harm a child under the age of 17, as well as a motor vehicle license violation. Apparently, he'd been driving a moped delivering food and had a 5-year-old tagging along with him on the back of the moped, not wearing a helmet. Following this incident, New York police had released Jose before a detainer could be issued. Though later, a spokesperson for the NYPD would say that they didn't even have his arrest on file. Just the next month, in October of 2023, Jose, along with his brother Diego, who was reported by authorities to be part of a Venezuelan gang, were arrested on theft charges after they had stolen merchandise from a nearby Walmart. Jose had failed to appear in court for this shoplifting case, and a bench warrant had then been issued. So due to the fact that Jose was an illegal immigrant in this country, following his arrest, Laken's murder began to make international news, as well as sparked huge debate over illegal immigration in the United States. Jose's brother Diego was also arrested for possessing an illegal visa while he was being questioned in Laken's murder. He would end up pleading guilty to possessing a fraudulent green card and will face up to 10 years. Now, Jose would end up waiving his right to a jury trial, meaning that his case was to be decided by a judge alone. Prosecutors would say that Jose had gone out hunting for females that morning in February, and that he had killed Laken by bashing her head in with a rock repeatedly after she struggled with him, refusing to be his rape victim. As evidence to support their case against Jose, the prosecution pointed out that the Spanish words for "I have" could be heard in the emergency phone call that was made by Laken that morning. Additionally, Jose's thumbprint could be found on Laken's iPhone, where you would hang the phone up. Jose's cell phone data also overlapped the data that had been pulled from Laken's smartwatch, and it showed that the two had been in very close proximity between 9:10 a.m. and 9:12 a.m. in the forest where Laken's body was later found. Jose's phone had also pinged in the area where the female grad student had made a 911 call earlier that day about the peeping Tom. Then there was the fact that Jose had taken a few selfies of himself earlier in the morning before Laken was killed. In these photos, he's wearing the same black Adidas cap and the same dark jacket that was seen throughout surveillance videos. But Jose's defense team was claiming that the evidence against their client was purely circumstantial. They argued that the state's evidence on the location of Jose's phone was questionable, as other people had access to his cell phone. Further, they questioned the credibility of the surveillance video of the man throwing the jacket into the dumpster, saying that the angle and the quality of the video made it too difficult to know for sure that it was Jose. They claimed that Jose's brother Diego owned the same hat and jacket, which then led the defense into their theory that Diego had actually been the one to kill Laken, not Jose. They claimed that if Jose was really the one in the video surveillance footage that was seen throwing away the jacket, he had only done so because his brother Diego had asked him to. The defense would also call forth a witness to try to prove their case against Diego. This witness was a woman who had lived next door to the Ibarras. She said that on the evening that Laken was killed, Diego had asked her what was going on because there was a lot of police presence. The witness told him that someone had been killed nearby and urged Diego to go to the police if he knew anything. She said that he had then spoken into his translation app and shown her the screen. It said, "If you tell them, I will tell them that you did it. And then I will kill you too." However, under questioning by the prosecution, this woman would admit that neither Diego or Jose had told her that they killed Laken. She also further admitted that she had been drinking that day and had previously been in a romantic relationship with Diego, and had been angry with him at the time because she thought he was involved with another woman. In the end, on November 20th, 2024, the judge would find Jose guilty on all charges and sentence him to life behind bars without the possibility of parole. One of Laken's siblings, Lauren Phillips, would speak about her sister, and she said, "Laken was the best sister, my built-in best friend from the first second." She continued on by saying, "This isn't fair and I will never understand it, but I know you are in heaven now. I'm not sure how I'm going to do this, but it's all going to be for you from now on. I cannot wait to give you the biggest hug someday." Laken's father, Jason Riley, remembered his daughter as a strong person who always excelled in her academics. In an interview, he would say, "I wish I had been there to protect her. I wish it would have been me. She was only 22. She had a lot of life to give to the world. If everybody could live like Laken, it would make the world a better place." Laken Riley's funeral was held on March 1st, 2024, at the Woodstock City Church. She was then buried at Enon Cemetery in Woodstock, Georgia. A memorial was additionally made for her at Lake Herrick, where her body had been discovered. Laken's family has said that they plan to establish a foundation in her honor, and they started an online fundraiser to raise money for the foundation, which they call Laken Hope Riley Foundation. It's designed to bring awareness to homicide as well as safety for women and provide a scholarship in Laken's name. So far, they have reached over $175,000 in donations. The apparent random attack of Laken led the community to demand further security measures be taken by the college. The school has responded by saying that they will commit over $7 million to new safety initiatives, including more police and safety call boxes. On March 7, 2024, the House of Representatives passed the Laken Riley Act, which will mandate federal detention of illegal immigrants who commit burglary or theft, and would allow states to file suit against the federal government for failing to enforce immigration laws. Well, thank you for listening to Laken's story today. Laken did all the things that people recommend a woman going out on her own should do the morning that she went for a run. Laken told her friends and her mother where she was going. She had her location turned on. She made sure to run on a popular trail where there were others around. Laken even managed to make an emergency phone call during her attack, but it all wasn't enough to prevent her from losing her life that day.
I'm so thankful for breath, for life, for heartbeats. It's just, you take those things for granted until they almost got taken away from you.
Landon Hoffman was born on January 24, 2014, to his parents, Carrie and David Hoffman. Landon also has a twin brother as well as a sister. He is a happy, friendly, and sweet little boy who loves hockey, soccer, and school. On April 12, 2019, 5-year-old Landon and his mother, Carrie, went to the Mall of America in Bloomington, Minnesota. They were there that day to meet up with one of Landon's friends from preschool and his mom. So shortly before 10 a.m., Carrie and Landon met up with them on the 3rd floor of the mall near the Rainforest Cafe restaurant. As the two moms were standing there chatting, the boys were looking at the robotic alligator out front of the Rainforest Cafe, when suddenly a man approached and began whispering to the boys. Carrie thought this was sort of strange, but she figured the man worked at the restaurant and asked him if he was going to turn the alligator on. The man said no and gave a strange sort of smile. So Carrie, not knowing what this man wanted, asked if he wanted the boys to not be standing on the rocks in front of the restaurant. The man replied back, "Oh, no, you're fine, you're fine." And before Carrie had a chance to ask him anything else, suddenly this man grabbed Landon, ran, and threw him over the railing of the 3rd floor balcony in the mall. It was more than 40 feet above the floor below. Carrie screamed no as she saw this strange man lift her son up over the railing and toss him. But it was too late. Landon was already up in the air and over the balcony. Within mere seconds, Carrie started running towards the escalators and ran down them to where her son was laying. As she did, she was screaming, "No, Landon is not going to die." Looking back, she says she barely even remembers doing it because she was in such a panic. Now, Carrie's screaming, as well as the horrible event that had just occurred, caught the attention of most people who were in the mall. This included a pair of pediatric nurses who happened to be shopping that day. These nurses were able to help with CPR, as a crowd quickly formed around Landon's body. 911 had been called, but nobody knew what to do as they were standing there waiting for the first responders to arrive. But Carrie just asked that everybody just pray for her son because Landon still had a heartbeat and he was breathing. And luckily, the first responders arrived quickly because Landon was suffering from multiple life-threatening injuries. CPR was administered by the paramedics at the scene, and then he was rushed to the hospital. Carrie said that she had gotten into the ambulance with her son, and right before the doors had closed, just for a second, she said that he opened his eyes. Now, the man who had thrown Landon over the 3rd floor railing was named Emmanuel Deshawn Aranda. And after he had thrown the little boy from the 3rd floor, Emmanuel had tried to flee from the scene. But a bystander ran after him and attempted to apprehend him. But Emmanuel grabbed this person, threw him up against the wall, and then he was able to continue fleeing. Emmanuel would be caught very shortly after by police and placed under arrest. They had caught him while he was trying to board a light rail train. Emmanuel was charged with premeditated attempted first-degree murder, and he was held on a $2 million bail. At the time of Emmanuel's arrest, he told police that he knew what he had done was wrong, but he had been looking for somebody to kill that day when he went to the mall. Apparently, Emmanuel's advances had been denied multiple times by multiple women who worked at the mall throughout the years. And after all these rejections, Emmanuel had gotten extremely aggressive and decided to lash out. Emmanuel also told police that he had actually intended to kill an adult that day at the mall, because they stand close to the railing, he said. But when he saw Landon, he changed his mind for one reason or another and decided that was his new target. The thing was, Emmanuel had actually been banned from the Mall of America on 2 previous occasions, but his most recent ban had expired in the last few weeks. The reason for these bans was because Emmanuel had a history of aggressive behavior while he was at the Mall of America that dated back for a few years. In July of 2015, he had been arrested for throwing things off of the upper balcony. And when police showed up at the time of this incident, Emmanuel initially resisted arrest. However, he was later convicted of 5th-degree assault and interfering with a peace officer. Later the same year, Emanuel was accused of throwing drinking glasses in a restaurant at the mall. This incident had occurred when Emanuel approached a woman who was waiting for a table and oddly asked her to buy him something. When she refused, of course, because she didn't know this man, Emanuel allegedly threw a glass of water in her face and then threw a glass of tea, which hit her in the leg. At that time, he was ordered to leave the mall and he was given a no trespass notice. He also pled guilty again to 5th-degree assault after this incident. And on yet another occasion in this same year, in August of 2015, police had been called to a local library because a man had been smashing computers. Apparently, Emanuel had been reading something on Facebook that he decided he didn't like, so he took his anger out on the computers. To this, he ended up pleading guilty to the charge of 1st-degree property damage and was sentenced to serve 28 days in prison, pay restitution, and undergo anger management training, which clearly didn't do much. Emanuel's mother said that even though her son has a long history of mental illness, she never thought he would do something like this. Well, I would hope not, because if you did think he was going to do something like this, I hope you would have done something. His mother also said that he had only ever been officially diagnosed with ADHD when he was younger. And a few nights prior to the Mall of America incident with Landon, Emanuel had actually showed up at his sister's house, punched her in the face, and then left. His sister would later say that Emanuel looked like a zombie. She had looked into his eyes and saw no soul. There was also another incident in 2014 that Emanuel had instigated at the Golden Nugget restaurant in Chicago. Emanuel had gone into the restaurant one Sunday to have breakfast when a customer who was sitting near him at the counter started speaking in Spanish to a server, asking to be moved because he said that Emanuel smelled terrible. So terrible, in fact, that he couldn't even finish his own breakfast. Gross. But apparently Emanuel knew Spanish and understood what this man was saying. He got up, screamed, told him he knew that he was insulting him, and cracked the plate over his head. After cracking the plate over his head, Emanuel had then rifled through his backpack, pulled out a knife, and tried to stab this man. The other man was luckily able to dodge the attack from the knife. But Emanuel wanted to kill somebody, apparently, because he then started running around the restaurant screaming, "Someone's gonna die," as the rest of the patrons ran for cover. Police had been called to the scene, and Emanuel was arrested and charged with assault, aggravated assault, theft, and battery. Ultimately, he pled guilty and was only sentenced to a mere 18 months of court supervision, not even jail. Now, as for Landon, he had been transported to the Children's Hospital in Minneapolis. He had multiple, very serious injuries, including broken bones throughout his body and a brain bleed. As soon as he had arrived at the hospital, Landon had been rushed into emergency brain trauma surgery. Many of Landon's relatives would gather in the waiting room while the little boy was still on the operating table, waiting to hear if he was going to make it. They waited, and then finally a doctor came out, and he told them that Landon was gonna be okay. Bones can heal, Carrie thought, but when she heard that his brain was fine, she breathed a huge sigh of relief. After Landon's surgery was over, and he had been brought into a recovery room, Carrie sat beside him and said that listening to him breathing with the machines beeping was the best sound she had ever heard in her life, because that meant her little boy was alive. So even though Landon had made it, he still had extensive injuries that would take quite some time to heal. The fall had shattered his wrists, hands, and elbows, broke his femur, and shattered the bones in his face. During Landon's road to recovery, he would have to have over 15 different medical procedures done, including having fluid drained from his lungs and stomach, as well as a surgery to place a stent inside a vein running through his liver. Landon also had surgeries for 2 broken arms, a broken leg, facial and skull fractures, and removal of his spleen. A GoFundMe was set up to help Landon's family pay for previous and ongoing medical treatments that had been a result of the incident. And the page had a goal of $500,000, but they ended up raising over $1 million, which is good because apparently Landon's medical bills
totaled over $1 million in the end. The family then gave an update on May 24, 2019, saying that Landon had been suffering from complications from his injuries. However, they were non-life-threatening, but he did have a long road ahead of him. After a long 4 months, Landon was finally released from the hospital. All his bones had healed. However, he did have an injury to his frontal lobe, which had changed him from a quiet and shy child to a louder and more impulsive one. But Landon, who loved school, made it out of the hospital just 5 days before he was going to start kindergarten, so he was able to make it to his first day of school. Now, Landon doesn't remember anything about the day of the incident or any of the bad parts of his recovery. When he is asked about his time in the hospital, he just tells everybody about the wheelchair races he had with his grandma and the games that he played with his dad. Landon says he just feels normal.
When your friends ask you about what happened to you, what do you tell them?
I tell them that it was me that got thrown, and they say, really? And then I show them everything on me, and then they believe it, and then sometimes, like, some people don't believe it, but I don't care if they do or not. I just care that lots of people do care about me, and I care about them too.
Landon, you're doing the Landon dance?
Yeah.
While being in the hospital was difficult, Landon also has many happy memories there.
What about the hospital do you remember?
Eating the popsicles.
Every step of the way, Landon determined to get better.
And you think he'll have a completely normal life now?
I think he can have the life that he wants to have, yes.
In May 2019, Emmanuel Deshawn Aranda took a plea deal and pleaded guilty to premeditated attempted murder. There had been an aggravated circumstances component added to the charge that could have meant an additional year in prison, so not much. And Emmanuel's mental health history never came up in court, and when given the opportunity to address Landon's family and the rest of the court, he declined. Emmanuel was ultimately sentenced to 19 years in jail. However, with his good behavior and time already served, Emmanuel will be eligible for parole 12 years from the date of his sentencing. While Landon and his parents did not make this court appearance, they did make a statement. They said, "Your act was evil and selfish. You chose to listen to the worst parts of you that day. That is where your impact on us stops. You will take nothing more from us." Then in December of 2022, the Mall of America settled a lawsuit with the Hoffman family. The family alleged that mall security should have stopped Emmanuel from prowling the mall without mall security closely following him. The lawsuit alleged that the mall and its security detail knew about previous violent, erratic, and aggressive behavior from Emmanuel. So Landon's family ended up being awarded an unspecified amount. And the Mall of America promised to toughen up its trespassing policies. Landon, who is a huge hockey fan, also got to meet his favorite hockey player, Alex Ovechkin, from the Minnesota Wild, after a game in March of 2023. The hockey player had heard about all the trauma and surgeries the little boy had gone through in the last few years and wanted to do something special for him. Alex and another teammate chatted with Landon, gave him autographs, and posed for photos. Landon said it was a dream come true. And reflecting on the years since the incident, Landon's mother, Carrie, said, "It still feels unreal. I'm just so happy to be here. We have no injuries, nothing but celebrating left to do." Well, thank you for listening to all of Landon's story today. This little boy was so lucky to have made it through this senseless act of violence by this completely unstable man. It's also scary to think that Emmanuel could be out of prison in as little as 7 years. If he's capable of doing this awful of a thing to a child out of nowhere, what else is he capable of? He's not getting any help for his mental health while he's in jail, so...
Was at cricket practice, and it was allowed from the intervention order. It was a public place. I believed he was safe. It was just a little cricket practice.
Luke Jeffrey Batty was born on June 20th, 2002 to his mother Rose Batty and his father Greg Anderson in New South Wales. He was an athletic boy and he loved playing cricket and football. He also loved bananas, SpongeBob, and the color yellow. When Luke's parents first met, they had both been working for a recruitment company, and Luke's mother, Rosie, quickly became enamored with his father, Greg. She thought he was good-looking, tall, well-dressed, and well-spoken. The couple had an on-again, off-again relationship for a couple of years, before meeting up again 8 years later when things became more serious. Just weeks into the relationship this time, Rosie would become pregnant with Luke. It was from this point that Greg began to display increasingly guarded and aggressive behavior. He also sometimes spoke of hearing voices. But despite Rosie's concerns, she wanted things to work out with the man who was soon to be the father of her child. She herself had never even planned on having kids. After losing her own mother at a young age, she had feared losing more individuals that she cared about. There was one instance where the couple had an argument, and while Rosie was at work, Greg decided to cut up a pair of slippers that she had bought him. He then went out to the garden and took an axe to a garden bench that the couple had recently renovated together. Now, when Luke was born, his mother was staying at the Russian Orthodox monastery in New South Wales. His father, Greg, who wasn't even present for his birth, had also been banned from the monastery after he began making abusive phone calls to Rosie. But it wasn't long after that Rosie would once again return to Greg. And when she did, the father showed his new son tons of love, caring for him, feeding him, and bathing him. However, his anger towards Rosie still could not be contained. As Luke's mother was healing from her C-section, Greg assaulted her for the first time. She had ended the relationship after this, but still kept in close contact, wanting Luke to have his father in his life. But by the age of 2, Luke had witnessed multiple physical altercations between his parents, including a time where Greg had picked up one of Luke's toys and smashed it into the handrailing of the staircase, and threw a bit of it in the direction where Rosie was standing near Luke. Greg then went over to Rosie and pulled her by the hair and told her that if she ever stopped him from seeing his son, he would kill her and her animals. The next day, after this chilling statement was made, Rosie would go and file for a restraining order against Greg. But because his anger had never been directed towards Luke, he was allowed to continue to see his son. Eventually, the restraining order against Greg would run out, but Rosie didn't bother to renew it because his intimidating behavior had stopped. The mother and son would soon move to the town of Taiab when Luke was just 3.5 to be closer to Rosie's friends. When she ended a long-term relationship with another man in 2012 when Luke was still just 9, Greg swooped back into Rosie's life and tried to rekindle their relationship as well as bring the family back together. But when Rosie rejected him, Greg lost it. On May 16, 2012, police were called to Rosie's home after she said that Greg had threatened to hit her with a vase in front of their son Luke. He would be arrested the same day, but due to multiple delays, he wasn't formally charged until the following January, and the case never made it to court. This also resulted in a family violence intervention order being made against Greg. The father, who had had little to do with his son for years, had now re-entered Luke and Rosie's lives and began taking Rosie on a legal custody battle over their son. Meanwhile, Greg's mental health had seemed to further decline. He had been living out of his car for years and smoked marijuana daily. Rosie was positive that Greg had a mental illness at this point, though he was never officially diagnosed with one. According to her, his deluded behavior and paranoia had sabotaged every relationship that he had. Greg's life was failing, and Rosie believed that his son Luke was the only bright spot in his life. So she continued to allow him to see his son, since he'd always been a good father to Luke and had never even raised his voice at the boy. Then, on January 3rd, 2013, Greg broke into Rosie's apartment. He chased her around, assaulted her, then threatened to kill her. He would be arrested, and when he was granted bail, it was on strict conditions, including that he was banned from the suburb of Taiab, where Luke had been attending football training. When Greg had been arrested for this incident, he exhibited very entitled behavior and would tell police officers, "I only answer to Jesus. What makes you think you've got the right to hold me at all?" But again, Greg had never been physically or verbally abusive towards Luke, so Rosie continued to let her son see his father.
I tend to interview you in relation to making threats to kill and making threats to inflict serious injury.
and use unregistered motor vehicle. Before continuing, I must inform you do not have to say or do anything, but anything you say or do may be given in evidence. Do you understand that?
I do. So I don't wish to say anything. Matter's finished. I wish to leave.
Yep, that's your right. I'll just read you this right as well. I must also inform you of your rights. You have the right to communicate with or attempt to communicate with a friend or relative to inform that person of your whereabouts. You have the right to communicate with or attempt to communicate with a legal practitioner. If you are not a citizen or permanent resident of Australia, you have the right to communicate with or attempt to communicate with the consular office of the country of which you are a citizen. Do you understand these rights?
What right do you think you have to hold me for what?
I'll get to that.
What right you've got to have me here at all?
Do you understand the rights that have just been read to you?
I understand what you've read to me. I want to know why you think that you've got a right to hold me at all.
Okay. Do you wish to exercise any of these rights before the interview proceeds?
Well, the interview's finished. I said I do not wish to comment.
Okay.
You have nothing, there is nothing.
Yep.
So let's move on.
In fairness to yourself, I just need to get through these questions and then whatever you want to say after that, we can do that.
I said I don't wish to say anything, so how can there be questions and answers? You're now insulting my right of intelligence. Right? And you're denying my right to legally represent myself by saying I do not wish to answer them. Do you understand what I'm saying to you?
No, I don't. I'm not denying you a right, that's why I'm asking.
You've denied me because I told you I do not wish to answer anything.
Yep.
That's right. Now you're going to ask me a list of questions.
Yep.
You've denied me the right.
Okay. So at this point in time, do you wish to exercise the right to call a lawyer or friend or relative? No.
I wish to leave. You have nothing, I wish to leave. You've arrested me before, it's gone through the court, you've had nothing. You've got the same person lying again.
Yep. All right, we'll just back up a bit. What's your age and date of birth?
You still have that information from before.
Yep.
It's on my driver's licence. You're asking me questions are there. And I said I would not ask questions, and you're still firing at me. You again have not exercised the right that you asked in the beginning that I could have.
Yep.
You're denying me my right by asking me my questions. Top hand, constable.
Okay.
In the name of Jesus Christ you are.
If I say to you your date of birth is the 3rd of November 1959, would you agree? The allegation is that on approximately 13:45 of the 3rd of the 1st 2013, okay. I'm going to suspend the interview at this time due to no participation from the accused.
Then, in April of 2013, Luke would come home to tell his mother about a very disturbing conversation that he had had with his dad. The distraught boy said that Greg had been holding a knife while the two were in the car together, and he told his son it could all end with this. The incident rightly alarmed Luke's mother, and she was able to obtain a no-contact order. This, however, would not prevent Luke's father from attending his football and other sporting events, as it was agreed upon, even by Rosie, that there was less risk out in public. On February 12, 2014, Greg would show up to Luke's cricket practice.
He said to me in the car, you know, he wasn't very keen to go to cricket training, but it was the last training session before their last match. And, you know, being part of a team means you've got to support your team and go even if you don't feel like it. I dropped Luke off. He was concerned about seeing his dad because he didn't think his dad was very happy.
But when Greg did arrive, he seemed to be in a great mood, was relaxed, and Rosie was happy to see him participating in their son's training sessions.
I was running training. I was the only coach there. So I recall on the night seeing Greg and thinking, oh, old man Batty's here. He's, you know, he's rocked up to train. Quite sure I remember him bowling in the nets, and I hadn't seen him bowl a ball or throw a ball or do anything before, so I thought that was a good thing at the time.
Luke and his father had been practicing behind one of the nets. And towards the end of practice, when it was time to go home, Luke begged his mother for more time with Greg. The other children had already started to leave, and Luke didn't see his father often, so Rosie saw no problem with this request. Rosie went to do something on her phone while Greg and Luke were practicing behind the nets, when suddenly she heard a horrible noise. The mother immediately began to run towards her son, and when she got there, she saw Greg kneeling on the ground besides Luke, who was just lying there. At first, she thought that Greg had just bowled a ball too hard and accidentally hit Luke in the head with it. After Rosie saw her son lying there, she had tried to call for an ambulance, but for some reason, her call would not connect. So she frantically began to run and call for someone to contact emergency services. She still believed this was all a terrible accident and that Greg's anguish was because he had accidentally hurt his son. But when one of the coaches rushed over to offer aid, Greg said to him, "He's fine. He's in heaven now." The father had deliberately hit Luke in the head with a cricket bat, then proceeded to stab him in the neck with a knife. When officers arrived, Greg threatened them with a knife, and they tried to subdue him with pepper spray, but that didn't work. Ultimately, they would end up shooting him, and he would later die of his injuries. Greg had intentionally prevented paramedics from accessing his son Luke. And once they finally were able to access him, once Greg was shot, they pronounced the 11-year-old dead on the scene. Young children who had witnessed the ordeal would later tell police that they had seen Greg intentionally hitting Luke with the cricket bat, followed by him pulling out his knife and repeatedly stabbing him. It was determined that Luke had died from his massive head injuries.
An absolute tragedy occurred here tonight about 6:40 p.m. The police have arrived and they've been confronted by a male, about 50 years old, armed with a knife. They've attempted to use less than lethal force, foam. It's been unsuccessful. They've then discharged a firearm, shooting that male once in the chest. He's at the Alfred Hospital at the moment in a life-threatening condition. A further examination of the scene has revealed the body of a 12-year-old boy who's deceased, and at the moment we're still making inquiries in relation to the exact cause of that death. The male that the police shot was the father of the deceased boy.
There's people there. I believed he was safe. I think it was a fair access. I think on the circumstances, I'm a victim like anybody else, that the court system and myself made decisions believing they were the best interests of Luke. I don't think anyone really understood or understands what somebody is able to do, and so as a sane person or as a caring parent, you trust that the very person that killed him loved him, and they did love him. They loved him more than anyone else. The only two people that love their son as much as anyone is their mother and father. And the very tragic thing about this is the father's life was tragic, and based on court appearances and other challenges in his life that we couldn't help him with, and neither could anybody else. He was on a path of desperate. No one loved Luke more than Greg, his father. No one loved Luke more than me. We both loved him. I did what I believe was in the best interests of Luke. And I'm comfortable with that. It was a tragic situation that no one could see was going to happen. I'm still dealing with disbelief.
Once Rosie came to terms with the fact that Greg had intentionally killed Luke, she said that she believed that Greg premeditated his son's death and chose to kill him, not because he truly disliked his son, but because it was a revenge tactic against her. She would say, "Can you imagine what that feels like? That someone against all odds wants to make you suffer for the rest of your life to win." Following Luke's death, it was discovered that Greg had recently threatened his roommate with cutting his head off. This had come after Greg was also arrested at the nearby library for looking at images of CP. On top of that, the father had once even threatened Luke's football coach, telling him, "I have a knife with your name on it." Greg also often heard voices, was obsessive about religion, often praying out loud, and would sometimes even have hallucinations. The father had even been in contact with the police just 3 weeks prior to Luke's death. But the officers who had spoken to him failed to execute warrants for his arrest because they didn't know about them at the time. And Luke's mother, Rosie, had never been made aware of the CP charges against Greg. She was also unaware of the death threat that Greg made against his roommate. At the time of Luke's murder, his father, Greg, was facing 11 criminal charges and was subject to 4 unexecuted arrest warrants. Rosie would say that she had considered calling police herself when she had seen Greg at Luke's cricket practice that night, knowing that he had a number of outstanding warrants for his arrest. But she decided not to, for Luke's sake, because she had done this on 2 prior occasions, and it had been very traumatic, stressful, and unpredictable for him. Greg had so successfully avoided arrest because he had been homeless for so much of the time. And when he learned that he had bench warrants for his arrest, Greg knew of a glitch in the legal system that meant that he no longer had to report to police for bail, which enabled him to avoid arrest. Following Luke's death, an inquest was held to determine what went wrong with the systems that were designed to protect him. But in the end, the inquest would find that no one person or agency could have been reasonably expected to foresee that Greg would be the perpetrator in his son's murder. Shortly after losing her son, Rosie bravely spoke to the media to talk about the reality of domestic violence in society, and she has been an ambassador ever since. She started the Luke Batty Foundation during the same month of the senseless loss of her son, and was awarded Australian of the Year in 2015. Rosie also said about Luke, "Luke was nearly as tall as me. He was sensitive. He enjoyed his footy. He enjoyed his cricket. He was effervescent. He was funny. He wasn't the best scholar, but he was intelligent, and he enjoyed school." She additionally said that Luke loved his father and felt pain because he knew that his dad was struggling. She continued, "He was a little boy in a growing body that felt pain and sadness and fear for his mum, and he always believed that he would be safe with his dad." Hundreds of people attended a candlelight vigil on the night of February 13th, 2014, at the sports ground where Luke died. Luke Batty's funeral was held on February 20th, 2014. Hundreds of his family members, friends, and schoolmates went to Flinders Christian Community College to pay their respects. His yellow coffin was adorned with bright flowers and a stuffed SpongeBob SquarePants toy. Well, thank you for listening to Luke's story today. I find it very hard to believe that there was not more that the systems could have done to protect Luke from his father. Just because he had never shown any anger or aggression towards Luke doesn't mean that he should have been around him. He was delusional, had threatened multiple people's lives, and police even knew that he was looking at inappropriate images of children. But they did nothing? Of course, Greg was the only one to blame in the end. But I absolutely think that more could have been done by police and by social services to protect Luke. What do you think?
Where's your emergency?
I can't find my daughter.
Okay, when was the last time you seen her?
We were here at the park and people said that somebody took her.
Dulce Maria Alaves was born in New Jersey on April 25, 2014. To her mother, Noema Alaves Perez, and her father, Edgar Perez. She was a sweet, loving, caring, and spunky little girl. Dulce loved watching the movie Frozen, while at the same time dancing and belting out the song Let It Go. She also enjoyed dressing up like a princess, and she was a great big sister to her younger brother, Manny. At the time Dulce was born, her mother, Noema, was very young, only 14 years old. So her own mother, Norma, took care of the little girl for the most part, and she eventually became her legal guardian. And at the end of 2019, Dulce's father, Edgar, was deported back to Mexico. Now, the little girl had just recently started kindergarten, and on the afternoon of September 16th, 2019, around 3 p.m., her mother was waiting for her to get off the school bus. She then took Dulce along with her younger brother, Manny, and Noema's 8-year-old sister, Camila, to nearby Bridgeton City Park. On the way, around 4 p.m., the family stopped at a local gas station to buy some ice cream, which is where the final images of Dulce were captured on security camera. From there, they drove 3 minutes to the park, which also has a playground. However, at the time, the playground was said to be closed off for repairs and only the swings were still open. Though Noema would later say in an interview that Dulce had been playing on the slides. When they arrived, the mother parked her car in the parking lot that was near the basketball courts, and Dulce, along with her 3-year-old brother Manny, jumped out of the vehicle and ran towards the swings. They were only about 30 yards away. Normally, Dulce's mother, who was 5 months pregnant at the time, would bring their dog to the park, and she would walk around the playground with him while keeping an eye on the children. However, this time she didn't. Instead, she stayed in the car with her 8-year-old sister, who was doing her homework, and during this time they also scratched a lottery ticket. So that day, Noema had promised Dulce that they would go to the park since it was so nice out. But a little while before, she had actually changed her mind because she was feeling rather lazy. However, this was not something that Dulce wanted to hear, and she began giving her mother a hard time. So in the end, Noema had agreed to go to the park, but she sat in the car because she was feeling so tired. According to the mother, she could see the playground from where she was sitting in the vehicle, but the swings where her son and daughter had run off to were obstructed by a hill. It was reported that around 4:20 p.m., Manny came running back to the vehicle, and his sister was not with him. However, Noema would say that she noticed she hadn't heard or seen her children in some time, so she had asked her sister to get out of the car and go look for them. When Camila came back to the vehicle, she was in a panic, and she had Manny with her, who was crying. His ice cream was on the ground, and when he was asked where Dulce was, he just pointed to a nearby utility shed. But after Noema went over there to look for her daughter, she was nowhere to be seen. So she called up her brother who lived nearby and asked him to come down to the park and bring his dog as well to help look for her daughter. Then Noema asked a group of individuals who had been playing on the basketball court if they had seen Dulce. One person told her that they had seen the little girl running towards the building, and there had also been an African American male standing nearby. Another child stated that they had seen a Hispanic man who had 2 young children with him. The thing is, there were no cameras located in the park, so there was no definitive way of telling where the 5-year-old had gone. At 5 p.m., about 40 minutes after she had noticed that Dulce was missing, Noema called the police and relayed to them the information that the people on the basketball court had given to her.
911, where's your emergency?
I can't find my daughter.
Okay, when was the last time you seen her?
We were here at the park and people said that somebody took her.
Okay. How old is she?
She's 5 years old.
Okay, and what park are you at?
Here in Bridgeton Park.
Okay, where at in the Bridgeton Park are you?
The one with the basketball court where high school is.
Okay, so you're at the basketball courts behind the high school?
Yes.
Okay. And what was she seen last wearing?
She was wearing, give me a second. ¿Qué estaba pasando con ese no viste? don't remember what clothes she was wearing, but she was wearing, I just remember her pants. She was wearing like a flowery pants and some heels, some white heels.
Okay. All right, ma'am, stay on the line. I'm going to transfer you over to the police, okay? And you said she was 5, correct?
Yes.
All right.
Hello, ma'am?
Hello.
Hi, did you see which direction your child went?
No, we were in the car. She came down with my son. They were running to the park, and then me and my sister, we came down. But when we got here at the park, she wasn't here. They said that my son was just crying with his ice cream. Because somebody threw his ice cream in the floor, and my daughter just ran away.
All right. You didn't see anyone else around there that she could possibly have went with?
No, not that I know of. Because we didn't saw no one. There's just some other people that they're here that said that they saw her running through some houses in the back. And they said that they saw two men. They saw a black guy and they saw a Mexican man with two kids.
Who's saying that they saw them?
Because there's people here in the basketball court that they saw her. They said that they saw her running.
They're saying that there's people there at the basketball court that they saw her running through some houses with two black males. She's light-skinned, Spanish. What color top does she have on?
I don't remember.
Okay. Are you at the basketball court?
Yes, I'm right here right now.
That's affirmed. She says that she's at the basketball court. And do you have your son with you, or is your son?
No, I have my son with me. They say he was crying when we found him. He was just standing there crying.
Oh, he was standing there crying. So you said that the black males took his ice cream?
No, they threw it in the floor. They had threw it in the floor.
So the two males took his ice cream and threw it on the floor, and then they left with your daughter?
Probably, because I didn't saw it. When we came and looked for her, we were looking everywhere for her, and we couldn't find her.
Her son was at the basketball court with her daughter, that there was two black males that took her son's ice cream and threw it on the ground and left with her daughter. Okay, well, we have the officers. Are you on Mayor Aiken?
I already have an officer here.
Okay. All right, we'll speak with the police, ma'am, okay?
Okay.
It wasn't long until there were over 30 officers with dogs searching the area for Dulce, but she was nowhere to be found. With Bridgeton High School just yards away from the park, and with an adult baseball game going on nearby, authorities estimated that roughly 400 cars had been in the area when Dulce went missing. Many locals soon came out to help look for the little girl. But this potentially destroyed any evidence that a kidnapper could have left behind, like footprints or tire tracks. Noema told authorities that her daughter would not have just wandered away on her own. She was not the type of kid who would do that. She had also taught Dulce that if anyone ever tried to take her or hurt her, she should scream really loud so someone could come to help. But there had never been a scream heard at the park that day, just silence. Additionally, the little girl's ice cream and ice cream wrapper were nowhere to be found, something that you think she would have dropped had there been a struggle. The bloodhounds that police brought in eventually would pick up Dulce's scent, but it ended at Burt Street, about 12 feet away from the storage shed. Now, for some reason, it wasn't until 10 p.m. the next day that an Amber Alert was finally issued for Dulce. In this alert, police said that it was believed that the 5-year-old was taken by a light-skinned, possibly Hispanic male, roughly 5 feet 6 inches tall, who was driving a red van. This man was thought to be wearing orange sneakers, red pants, and a black shirt. It was said that he had been in the park that day with 2 other children under the age of 5, and Dulce may have gotten into a vehicle with him. It wasn't long until the little girl's mother, Noema, began facing serious criticism for not watching her children better while at the park, and many began to blame her for what had happened. They additionally wondered why it had taken her so long to call emergency services. The FBI was also now involved in the search for the 5-year-old. Dive teams began looking in nearby bodies of water, while police used dogs and helicopters to try to locate Dulce. A reward for any information leading to the little girl's whereabouts was also now being offered. Authorities were able to get in touch with Dulce's father, Edgar, and they quickly ruled him out as a suspect. Then rumors began to swirl that the girl's mother had been arrested, but police would make it clear during a press conference that that was simply not true. Noema spoke publicly and tried to dispel any rumors that she had anything to do with Dulce's disappearance.
Today marks 2 weeks since the monster that took my daughter. On that day, my life changed for the worst. I have not been the same ever since. People are saying it has something to do with it. This and saying bad things about me. Please stop the rumors. Please stop pointing fingers when you don't know and we don't know who took her. I want to thank the law enforcement for searching and investigating, all the media for covering my daughter's case since day one. Also, everybody that has taken time out of their schedule to go out and look for her. All the prayers for my family and we all greatly appreciate it all. I beg you all, please don't give up on my Dulce. Let's keep pushing to find her safe. Please continue to pass along her pictures on social media and passing out flyers. Don't be afraid to call any tips. If you were here in the park that day, please double check your phone for pictures, and any little bit may help.
Mama, can you show us what you brought with you today?
I brought her favorite toy, Frozen. She loves to play Frozen. She always used to sing it. She always used to tell me to put her song Frozen, and everything. She always listens to it. She even has a dress, and she puts it on and thinking that she's Frozen.
For Elsa?
Yes.
How are you?
Worried about my daughter.
The fact that it's been 2 weeks today, can you share with us if you've reflected on what you might have done differently that Monday afternoon?
How?
Would you have done anything differently that day?
No. I just don't be going out that much, so now I'm scared. I'm scared of going out now because of people saying things and rumors.
But what I'm getting at is, take us back to that Sunoco. You stopped to get ice cream. Did anyone say anything to you at that store? Did anyone follow you from the store to the park?
No. No.
What do you think happened to your daughter?
I'm not sure.
Have you ever been bothered? Your children ever been bothered? Any custody issue?
No.
Everybody's very curious about Dulce's father. Can you tell us what you know as far as what's been going on the last 2 weeks since your daughter disappeared, as far as him? Has he come to the U.S.? Have you spoken to him? What can you tell us about him?
I haven't talked to him since that, but I had talked to him, but then we stopped talking.
Do you have a good or bad relationship with him?
We don't usually talk that much.
Do you think he's involved in this?
I don't think so, because he's in Mexico.
Is he still there?
Yes.
He hasn't come here?
No, he can't because he doesn't have the money to come.
Noema, could you share with us what your son said to you when he ran back to the car?
He didn't run back to the car. He was just standing there, crying.
And what did he say in those initial
He doesn't
moments?
talk.
He doesn't talk?
No.
So he was crying?
He was just crying. When I went up to him and I asked him, where's your sister? He's just pointing behind the buildings. That's it, because he can't speak still.
Nearly a month after Dulce went missing, police released a sketch of a potential suspect whom they wanted to talk to. He was described as a slender male, possibly Hispanic, roughly 30 to 35 years old, standing 5 feet 6 inches to 5 feet 8 inches tall, and he had acne on his face. The man was seen wearing a baseball cap, a black shirt, orange sneakers, and red shorts, and he was driving a red van that had sliding doors. This has made many wonder how someone could have been close enough to this individual to see that he had acne on his chin, yet not close enough to know if he actually had Dulce with him. It's also never been said who it was that gave this description to police. The 5-year-old's disappearance soon gained national attention, and her mother, Noema, was invited onto the Dr. Phil show in December of 2019 for an interview. When she appeared, she was asked if she had any idea as to who could have taken Dulce. At that point, she mentioned an old friend who had tried to date her several times in the past, but she had always shut him down. The man had seen her and Dulce together recently and asked if that was her daughter, to which she replied yes. According to her, this man was one of the last people that saw Dulce. However, Noema would later tell another news station that she did not believe that this person had anything to do with her daughter's disappearance. And the only reason why she had mentioned him was because she was trying to answer Dr. Phil's questions. She also stated that police had previously given her a polygraph test, but they had never given her the results of it. Many believed that when Noema was on the Dr. Phil show, her demeanor was off. She did not seem that upset and didn't shed a single tear. Dr. Phil shared a similar sentiment, saying that she was one of the most emotionally flat parents with a missing child that he had ever seen. However, he also stated that this may have been due to her first language being Spanish, because when she made an appeal to her daughter in that language, her emotion was much more apparent. A woman named Jackie Rodriguez, who had previously been a spokesperson for the family, would speak about Noema on the show. She said that she had known the mother for years and had only seen her cry once. It was just normal for her to not cry. But Jackie also said that Noema seemed too calm, like she knew where her daughter was, and she knew that she was okay. Jackie, who now runs a Facebook page for Dulce's case, has claimed that Noema had a boyfriend at the time that Dulce went missing, the father of her 2 youngest children. And according to her, he was arrested the week after the little girl went missing on charges of essaying a minor, though it was unrelated to Dulce. It's also been said that he owned a red van. Another odd thing is that Dulce's grandmother, Norma, who said that the little girl normally loved school, had been crying that morning about not wanting to go. Eventually, her grandmother had bribed her with pizza, saying they could get some at the end of the day. But she had found this rather strange because Dulce always wanted to go to school. The search for Dulce continued for years with no results. Then come 2022, some cryptic letters began to show up in Ohio. There was one postcard that had been sent to a casino and racetrack that was near Austintown, Ohio. And it said, "Look for Dulce Alaves, age 5, kidnapped, Bridgetown, New Jersey. Look website for story photos. Dr. Phil, 76 truck stop, dead end street, entrance woods. Please look." 2 more letters were sent to a library and an ice cream shop in the area. All 3 were handwritten, and the postcard had a zip code from Mexico. However, authorities have said that they do not believe that it actually came from Mexico, but rather the person who wrote it just put that on there. The area specified in the postcard had been searched by officers, but they were unable to find any evidence leading to Dulce's whereabouts. One of the letters, the one that had been sent to the library, was rather hard to read, but it had keywords in it such as Alaska, Mexico border, 1776, Civil War, New England town, kids home, and orphanage. All these letters appeared to have been written by the same person, but they were eventually dismissed as nothing but a hoax. Many people think that Dulce's father, Edgar, may have had something to do with her disappearance, especially since he's in Mexico, and many tips that law enforcement have received have come from Mexico. There's also the fact that the little girl did not scream when she was taken, which likely means that she was taken by someone that she knew. As Dulce's 7th birthday approached, her father Edgar posted a video online, wishing her a happy birthday and proclaiming that he had nothing to do with her disappearance. This prompted police to reach out to him once again, but nothing further would come of it.
Hello everyone, my name is Edgar Torres. In his own words, the father of Dulce Maria Alaves with a message on his daughter's 7th birthday.
I'm really sad and hurt. It's been almost 2 years.
According to police, her mother said she found Dulce's 3-year-old brother crying and her daughter nowhere to be found.
I don't know if my baby girl is okay.
Perez, who was deported in late 2018 and unable to see his daughter in the months leading up to her disappearance, professing to those who questioned his relationship with Dulce Maria that he took care of her from when she was a little baby.
I changed her diaper and did everything for her.
And denying claims he has her or knows where she is.
For those that think that I took my baby girl, let me tell you that I got nothing to do with it. Just like everyone, I want to know where she is.
Do you think he had something to do with her disappearance?
To be honest, I don't know, because I haven't seen them. I haven't talked to him.
Is there someone you suspect?
To be honest, no.
Noema remains convinced that her daughter has not disappeared forever, and she said, "In my mother's heart, I believe I'll see her again one day." According to her, she's been living a nightmare, and no matter how hard she tries, she can't seem to wake up from it. Noema stated, "Every night when I go to sleep, I'm like, God, please don't let this all be real. But then I wake up the next day, and it is. And it's been that way for me again and again, every single day since the day Dulce disappeared." Multiple candlelight vigils have been held for Dulce Alaves, who to this day has still not been found. Since her disappearance, her family has celebrated Dulce's birthdays and Christmases at Bridgeton City Park as they gather around Dulce's tree. If you have any information in regards to Dulce's whereabouts, please contact either the FBI or the Bridgeton Police Department at 856-451-0033. Well, thank you for listening to Dulce's story today. I think that someone that she knew had to have taken her at the park that day. There were no signs of a struggle, and no one heard a scream. I also feel like there's the potential that her mother knows more than she's saying. Like the family's previous spokesperson, Jackie, said, she seemed much too calm throughout the entire ordeal. But what do you think? Either way, hopefully Dulce's out there somewhere, safe and still alive. If you like true crime and you want to hear it from me, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications too, so that you'll know when I upload a new video, which is at least 3 times every single week. Thanks for watching A Wicked World today. Until next time, take care guys. Bye. Thank you to all the patrons of A Wicked World. Now, there's even more of A Wicked World on Patreon. So check it out on patreon.com/awickedworld or use the Patreon app. You'll have access to exclusive videos each month and more. Any support truly helps to make sure the victims are never forgotten and to highlight the shortcomings of society associated with each case. Do you have a suggestion for a story you'd like to see me cover? If so, send me an email to awickedworldtruecrime@gmail.com.